The concept of someone being boiled alive as a form of execution is one of the most gruesome and torturous punishments ever recorded in human history. While rare, there are historical cases where this horrific method was employed. Notable historical case: Richard Roose, England, 1531. One of the most documented cases of someone being boiled alive occurred under the reign of King Henry VIII of England. Who was he? Richard Roose, or Rouse, was a cook in the household of the Bishop of Rochester. What happened? In 1531, he was accused of poisoning a pot of porridge intended for the bishop's guests. 2 people died, and several others became ill. Why boiled alive? The crime shocked the court and public. As a result, King Henry VIII passed a special law decreeing that poisoning would be punished by death by boiling, which was seen as fittingly excruciating for such a cowardly and invisible weapon. The execution. Rose was publicly boiled to death in Smithfield, London. Accounts describe that he was lowered into a cauldron of boiling water, sometimes being raised and lowered to prolong the agony. It was said that his screams horrified onlookers, Asia and the Middle East. There are scattered historical references suggesting that boiling oil or water may have been used as punishment in some parts of Asia or the Islamic world, but these accounts are often difficult to verify and may blend into legend or exaggeration. Mongol legends and ancient practices. Some sources suggest boiling was used as a brutal punishment by certain Mongol rulers, though often the details are sparse or based on second-hand reporting. Intended as deterrent punishment for especially reviled crimes like treason or poisoning. Also served as public spectacle, a warning to others, inflicted maximum suffering. To make an example of the condemned, execution by boiling is considered a form of torture and is completely outlawed under international human rights law. It stands as a reminder of the extremes of human cruelty in systems of punishment. Execution of Richard Roose, its political context, the public reaction, and the lasting legacy of boiling as punishment, followed by a dramatic retelling of the event. The early 16th century in England was a time of tension, paranoia, and religious unrest. King Henry VIII was becoming increasingly autocratic, and his break with the Catholic Church was just beginning. The idea of someone committing a crime like poisoning a bishop's household, and by extension, attacking the church, was not just a personal crime. It was a potential political statement. King Henry VIII used the Richard Roose case to make an example. Parliament passed the Act of Poisoning 1531, which made poisoning high treason and punishable by boiling alive, bypassing the traditional method of hanging, drawing, and quartering for treason. This law was repealed in 1547, after Henry's death, seen as excessively cruel even in that brutal age. Witness accounts, while limited, suggest the execution was horrifying even to 16th century Londoners, who were no strangers to public executions. People reportedly wept or turned away. Rose was said to have screamed uncontrollably, his skin sloughing off as he thrashed in the bubbling cauldron. Some accounts claim he was lowered in stages to prolong his suffering, a leg or arm at a time. It served as a macabre spectacle, meant to terrify. But it also disturbed many and added to the reputation of Henry VIII as a brutal ruler. Smithfield Market, London, March 1531. The chill in the air did little to cool the heat from the monstrous iron cauldron perched above the roaring fire. A crowd of hundreds gathered, merchants, peasants, nobles. Some stood on crates to get a better view. In the center, shackled and pale, stood Richard Roose, the cook. Sweat mixed with tears on his brow as he was dragged toward the vat of boiling water, the surface churning like a witch's brew. A town crier shouted his crimes. For poisoning with cowardice and malice, the cook shall be boiled, alive, as per the command of His Majesty King Henry. Gasps erupted. A woman fainted. The executioner gave no ceremony. With a nod, Roose was hoisted by chains and lowered, feet first, into the cauldron. His screams shattered the air, echoing against stone and flesh alike. The water hissed. His skin blistered, then blackened. He writhed, splashing scalding water over the rim. Some say it took minutes. Others claim nearly an hour before he stopped moving. By the end, even the executioner looked pale, and the law, that singular, monstrous law, was written into the annals of England. The execution of Richard Roose remains a unique and horrific event in English history. The act of boiling was never widely used. Roose was one of the very few, if not the only individuals, executed this way in England. Today, it serves as a powerful historical example of how fear and power can produce barbaric legal responses. Psychological unraveling of Richard Roose, the ritual of his final moments, and the symbolic weight of this event in Henry VIII's England. Following this, I'll present a short literary scene from Roose's perspective. The mind of a condemned man, Richard Roose before the cauldron Roose. Wasn't a known political agitator or nobleman. He was a cook, a common man, likely uneducated, who may not have even intended murder. Some theories claim the poisoning was accidental or even falsely attributed to him due to paranoia. As his execution approached, he would have endured isolation in the tower or a dungeon, under suspicion and without real hope. Interrogation, possibly under duress, and being told of the king's personal interest in his punishment. The realization that his death would be unprecedented in its cruelty. Imagine the terror, knowing that your death has been made into a public spectacle, a law created just for you, and that no mercy, not even the relatively quick execution of hanging, would be offered. Ritual of execution, March 5th, 1531. Historians believe the boiling execution was not hastily conducted. It involved building a fire big enough to boil a man-sized cauldron of water or oil, erecting a platform where all could see, bringing in the condemned, shackled and stripped, public reading of the crime and new law, turning punishment into spectacle, and sermon. Lowering the body slowly, limbs first, to prolong the age, it was theater. A brutal, primal display of the monarch's absolute power, not just to kill, but to decide how to kill. Literary scene, The Boiling Day, Richard Roose's final moments, March 5, 1531, Tower of London, dawn. Richard Roose awoke to the sound of boots echoing down the stone corridor. He hadn't slept, not really. His wrists ached from the iron. His stomach roiled, not from hunger, but dread. "On your feet, Roose," said the guard. "You'll not need the bed much longer." Two men flanked him, one with a scroll. They read the charges again, though. Roose had heard them dozens of times. "For the act of poisoning, and by the king's decree, thou shalt be boiled alive until death take thee." His knees buckled. As they marched him through the streets to Smithfield, the sky was grey and close. Word had spread. The cook who poisoned the bishop's pot. He saw mothers cover their children's eyes, men whispering. The cauldron was already steaming when he arrived. The scent of heated iron and wood smoke filled the air, but beneath it, he could smell it, something foul. "Not just water. Is it oil?" he whispered. No one answered. As his chains were fastened to the crane hook, he cried out, not in protest, but in prayer. "God forgive me. If I have sinned, let death be quick." He was raised. The steam kissed his skin before the water did. Then the descent began. First, the feet. Burning, boiling, roaring. The crowd heard him scream, and the king, far away in his palace, heard only silence. For he had made a law, and laws must be enforced. Final thoughts. Richard Roose's story is one of fear weaponized, of how a monarch's wrath can reshape justice itself. His fate became a warning, not just to poisoners, but to anyone who might defy the crown. A historical anomaly where vengeance overtook tradition and mercy, a symbol of the line between justice and spectacle.